Have you ever watched someone about to make the biggest mistake of their life? That's exactly what happened this evening when a famous singer noticed a quiet woman in the crowd. He thought she was just another easy target, someone ordinary who could be picked on for a cheap laugh. But fate is not always kind. Sometimes the silent person in the back row holds something unexpected in their hands, something that will leave you speechless. And believe me, you won't notice. Emma didn't plan to be here tonight. The ticket sat in her kitchen drawer for weeks, next to old receipts, expired coupons, and random takeout menus. Her colleague Jessica won a prize on some local radio show and insisted that Emma go. "You seriously need to leave," Jessica told her, rolling her eyes when Emma hesitated. And no, watching wildlife documentaries does not count as socializing. And just like that, Emma found herself squeezed into a chair that probably cost more than her monthly groceries. Everyone around her looked like they stepped out of a fashion catalog. Designer outfits, flawless makeup. Emma glanced down at her denim jacket. It was cozy and practical, but suddenly it felt like the wrong choice. The whole place exuded wealth. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. The ceiling was covered in ornate paintings trimmed in gold. Even the air smelled of expensive perfume and pretentiousness. Emma couldn't help but wonder if there was a dress code printed somewhere on the ticket. "Is this your first time here?" the woman next to her asked. Her blonde hair was perfectly curled, and her shiny blouse reflected the light. "Yes," Emma replied, trying hard not to seem out of place. "Would you like it? I've seen every big name perform on this stage." The woman leaned closer and lowered her voice. Although, to be honest, some of these new artists are too flashy and lack depth. If you know what I mean. Emma nodded politely, although she wasn't sure she completely agreed. To her, good music was good music. Either it touched your soul or it didn't. She'd always valued lyrics that told genuine stories more than flashy vocal lines. As the lights dimmed, Emma felt a flutter in her chest, that spark of anticipation you get during a live performance. There's something almost electric about sitting in a room full of strangers, all sharing the same expectations. That moment when the music starts and takes you somewhere else. She'd only been to a few concerts before. Her first was a folk music festival when she was 16. Just guitars, raw vocals, and truth in every line. That night, she fell in love with music that meant something real to her. One time, her aunt dragged her to a classical concert, which, to her surprise, turned out to be truly wonderful. The third concert she went to was a disaster. A punk band that her college roommate was obsessed with. The music was so loud Emma couldn't understand a word, and she left with a massive headache. But tonight was different. The crowd was excited, but not screaming uncontrollably. It's like comparing champagne and cheap beer. Both drinks can get you drunk, but one has an elegance. Emma sat back, deciding to give this guy, Damon Rivers, a chance. She'd heard a few of his songs on the radio, catchy, with a pleasant voice and decent lyrics, just not very profound. Still, she had to be the reason for his fame. Maybe seeing him live would understand why everyone was obsessed with him. The room filled with a buzz of mounting anticipation. Around her, people were animatedly discussing favorite tracks, past tour dates, and speculating about the evening's set list. Despite her doubts, Emma found herself being drawn in. There is something infectious about being surrounded by people who genuinely love something, even if she didn't feel it yet. She took out her phone to quickly check the time, then put away again. Jessica would probably want a full report tomorrow. You had fun, you interacted with someone, you remembered how to be a person and not a hermit. Emma could already imagine this playful interrogation. Maybe it wouldn't be so terrible. Maybe she'd even like it. At least it would give her something halfway interesting to tell Jessica on Monday. Better than the usual review of the weekend's laundry and on her way to the grocery store. What she didn't know was that it would become the most memorable part of the entire evening. The moment Damon Rivers took the stage, Emma immediately understood why teenagers were going crazy for him on social media. He was stunning. His dark hair was artfully tousled, his navy blue jacket tailored to perfection, and had a confident demeanor that suggested he'd never doubted any of his life's choices. "Good evening, beautiful people," he said. His voice carried throughout the room, soft and warm like aged whiskey. The crowd went wild, and Damon reveled in it, standing there as if this moment was written in the stars, throwing himself into his most successful hit, a rousing anthem that had the crowd singing along and swaying in unison. Emma had to admit, his vocals were flawless, powerful, precise, technically perfect, but somehow it didn't get through to her. It was more like watching a carefully crafted advertising campaign than listening to real music. Between songs, Damon played to the crowd like a seasoned performer. "How's everyone doing tonight?" he called out. There were shouts and cheers. "I can't hear you. How are you all feeling?" More shouts. "That's what I'm talking about." He smiled, cheering. "You know, I performed all over the world." He paused, as if trying to remember something. "But there's something truly special about being here tonight with all of you amazing people." Emma couldn't help but notice. He never mentioned the name of their city. He probably used that phrase everywhere he performed, simply changing the name of the city, depending on where he was. As the concert went on, Damon's flawless image began to crack, and bits of his true personality began to leak out. He made comments about the venue, which sounded like praise, but had a strange undertone. He would call the audience over and comment on their clothes in a way that seemed lighthearted. But in reality, it felt more like subtle insults disguised as humor. "I really like seeing real people in the crowd," he said during one of his long mid-show speeches, scanning the audience with a sharp, almost hunting gaze. Not just industry insiders or critics, but real people living real lives. "It keeps me grounded. Reminds me of what made me fall in love with music in the first place." The words rang true, but his voice made it clear these people weren't inspiring him. They were entertaining him. Emma shifted uneasily in her seat. She'd worked enough in retail to recognize fake friendliness, and Damon was exaggerating. And honestly, he continued, clearly bracing himself for a dramatic moment. "My best performances happen when I'm able to truly connect with ordinary people, when I can break down this barrier between us and share something real." And here we are again, ordinary people. He said it the same way her ex-husband spoke of her hobbies, as if praising a child for trying to draw within boundaries. The woman in glitter sitting next to Emma believed it completely. "He's so humble," she whispered. "So real and understandable." Emma remained silent. Real was the last word she used to describe what she observed. Everything about Damon Riversea seemed rehearsed, from the perfectly timed pauses to the well-placed stories designed to make him seem humble. Sure, he had talent. Sure, he was magnetic on stage, but the authenticity wasn't even close. As he began his next song, Emma glanced around the audience. Most of the faces were mesmerized, carried away by the fantasy he was selling. They either didn't notice what she saw or they didn't want to notice. Sometimes people prefer a beautiful lie to an inconvenient truth. But Emma had always had a talent for seeing people, and Damon's carefully crafted image began to crumble. Then everything changed. It happened during what was supposed to be his emotional climax, a love ballad about finding something real in a fake world. Emma didn't miss the irony, considering who was singing it. The lights dimmed almost to darkness as Damon walked through the crowd with a wireless microphone, approaching the happy fans. Most were delighted, reaching out to him for selfies and holding out their hands. Emma, meanwhile, was checking her watch, wondering if it would be rude to leave before the encore. And that's when it happened. Their eyes met. Damon was making his way through the crowd, flashing his signature smile. When he noticed Emma, his phone was gone. No outstretched hand, no surprise. She didn't even try to look impressed. In fact, she looked more like someone sitting in a boring work meeting, politely enduring what she indifferent. For a man accustomed to constant adoration, Emma's indifference seemed to have his complete attention. "Well, hello," he said, suddenly changing direction and heading straight for her. "You look like you're having a great time." Emma felt her face heat up as everyone turned to see what had captured the star's attention. "I enjoy the show," she replied carefully. Technically, that's not a lie, but enjoying it meant doing a lot of work. Damon's smile changed. Now she has become sharper and less friendly. "What is your name, dear?" "EMT. Emma," he repeated, as if tasting something that didn't quite live up to expectations. "So tell me, Emma, What do you do when you're not showing up to gigs dressed in your best Sunday clothes? Nervous laughter rippled through the surrounding rows. Emma's cheeks flushed, but her voice remained level. I work in an office. An office? Damon clapped his hands as if she'd just said something endearing. How adorable. Pokey, you bet. You have strong views on music, don't you? You probably think these TV talent shows discover real artists. The arrogance in his tone was evident now. Emma noticed phones popping up all around her. People, sensing drama, eager to record every second. She was no longer just a person in the crowd. She was becoming part of the show, something to laugh about. I think good music is good music, no matter where it comes from, Emma said, her confidence soaring. And I believe that true talent doesn't need to insult others to prove itself. A few people nearby nodded slightly and murmured something in agreement, but Damon's eyes narrowed. He was clearly not accustomed to being challenged, especially by someone he considered easy prey. And we have a thinker, he said to the audience, his voice full of false charm. You know what, Emma from the office? Since he knows so much about what real talent looks like, why don't you come over here and show us? The summons landed heavily in the air, as if someone had just loaded a gun. Emma's insides sank. It was no longer playful teasing. It was a public trap disguised as friendly interaction with the audience. Come on, Damon urged. His smile became razor sharp. If talent speaks for itself, here's your chance to let it speak. The room filled with noise. Some urged her to leave. Others clearly wanted to see the disaster happen. Emma felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. She could literally hear the captions being written on social media about her fall. Part of her wanted to disappear into the chair, but the bigger part, the one that had been silent for too long, was tired of watching people like Damon make others feel small simply because they could. You know what? She said, slowly getting up. Sure, why not? Walking to the stage was like walking through thick syrup. Everything slowed down, her steps, the quiet hum of the crowd, her own quickening heartbeat. She became very acutely aware of all this. The sounds of phone shutters, whispers, the heavy pressure of many glances. Damon stood and waited, practically beaming with anticipation as she approached the stage steps. Ladies and gentlemen, he said with an over-the-top sense of humor, let's hear from Emma in the office. The applause was weak and hesitant. The kind you hear when everyone is expected to shake. Emma's legs were shaking as she climbed the steps. When the light touched her, the rest of the room plunged into darkness. It felt like I was standing completely alone. So, Damon said, holding the microphone like a magic wand. Please don't tell me we're in for a greatest hits karaoke moment. Emma took the microphone. He felt surprisingly secure in her arms, as if he had always been there. Actually, she said, her voice coming through loud and clear through the speakers. I meant something else. Something stirred in her chest. The fear was still sharp and cold, but underneath it something warmer was awakening. What was kept silent about for years. Under the spotlight, pieces of her own dream came back to her, pieces she had buried so deep that she once thought they had disappeared completely. This song means something to me, she said, looking into the dark space beyond the lights. It's about remembering who you are when everyone else is trying to decide it for you. She noticed Damon out of the corner of her eye. He crossed his arms over his chest, smugly waiting for her to fall. The audience froze, not with impatience, but with awkward discomfort, preparing for something unpleasant. Emma closed her eyes and let the memories come back. Her mother drank quietly as she cooked dinner, her voice filling their tiny kitchen with warmth. Mrs. Patterson, her old voice teacher, always thought Emma had something special, but never pressed her when lessons were over. Those countless nights in her bedroom, singing into the mirror and dreaming of that moment when she opened her eyes, something inside her changed. The fear remains, but it evolved into something new. Not quite confidence, but a certain calm confidence. At that moment, she realized who she was. She knew she had to give. Her first note was soft, as if she were telling a secret to someone she trusted. But it was pure, rich, and piercing, cutting through the glitter and spectacle of the evening. It wasn't about showing off. It was not about proving any point. It was about telling the truth. The group rushed after her, trying to find the key, but she didn't need them. Her voice carried its own rhythm, its own story, its own naked honesty. As she melded into the music, the song swelled not with false drama, but with the effortless rise of water flowing down a slope. Damon's confident smile began to fade. It wasn't part of the script. Nobody expected this, and Emma was just getting started. For the first time in 20 years, she found herself exactly where she was destined to be. What happened next could not be measured by training, methodologies, or industry checklists. It came from something deeper, from that place where music lives before it becomes notes or lyrics. Her voice filled the room as if she had finally come home. She didn't just sing, she lived every word, breathing life into every line with the kind of genuine sincerity that most people can only pretend to have. Her voice had depth and texture, conveying stories that no book could fully convey. It wasn't flawless like Damon's, but there was something much rarer about it. It was real, completely and unmistakably real. The change in the crowd was instantaneous. People put their phones down, forgetting about filming and simply enjoying the moment. Conversations died down mid-sentence. Even the venue staff, who had seen countless performers, stopped to listen. But the most striking change happened to Damon. His smug expression disappeared. Now he stood motionless, stunned, as if he were seeing the world differently for the first time. His arms hung loosely at his sides, and his gaze was fixed on Emma. It was as if everything he believed in was being rewritten before his eyes. Emma's voice rose, not forced, but freely, like a person who has finally remembered his truth. Her simple denim jacket and white t-shirt, which had previously seemed out of place, now looked perfect, honest, unpretentious. The authenticity is so authentic that everything else on stage seems artificial in comparison. As the song reached its climax, Emma opened her eyes and looked out into the crowd. Now she could clearly see faces, whole rows. Some cried silently. Some stood frozen in amazement. Many smiled in the way that only happens when you see something truly rare and beautiful. The last notes hung in air long after her voice had faded. The room held them tenderly, as if no one wanted to let them go. Then applause. One person claps slowly and steadily. This is how a person claps when he knows that something unusual has just happened. More hands joined together. Soon everyone in the room jumped to their feet. Not because they felt obligated, but because they couldn't help but do it. Emma stood motionless, breathing heavily, stunned, like a person awakening from a long, strange sleep. The applause continued again and again, but what struck her most was its quality. It wasn't polite. It wasn't forced, it was honest. Confession in its purest form. Damon approached her, but he was no longer the same man with whom this night began. All his self-confidence evaporated. What was left looked a lot like humility. He began, then fell silent. For the first time all night, he was at a loss for words. It wasn't even me. Emma looked at him with a soft, maybe even kind expression on her face. Music isn't meant to make people feel small, she said quietly, handing him a microphone. It's about helping them remember that they are part of something bigger. The applause continued, growing behind her. But Emma had already started to leave, walking down the stage, ready to return to the crowd, where she always belonged.